And next slide, please, Joni. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. It's our second in our webinar series of job development, building skills to connect with the business community. And this is session 2, marketing your employment services. This webinar will be facilitated by Joni Dolce, and my name is Katia, and I am just hosting and answering any questions that you might have. I'll be in the chat room with you. Next slide, please. So this webinar is sponsored by the Northeast and Caribbean Mental Health Technology Transfer Center, or MHTTC, and we're housed at Rutgers in the School of Health Professions in the Department of Psychiatric Rehabilitation and Counseling Professions. Again, my name is Katia, and I'm the project coordinator of the center, and we'll be hosting the webinar today. Next slide, please. So if you're interested in staying up to date with the events and products that our center is offering, we ask that you please sign up to receive our email communications. You may do so by signing up on the bit.ly link that you see on the screen, and I'll share it in the chat box as well. Next slide, please. Following the webinar, you'll be asked to complete a brief survey. We value this feedback and use it to improve our activities and inform future activities. The surveys are also important because our continued funding is linked to the completion of these surveys, so we thank you in advance for your feedback. Next slide. We also want to let you know that this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our website along with PowerPoint slides in the next couple of days. This presentation was prepared for the Northeast and Caribbean Mental Health Technology Transfer Center under a cooperative agreement from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. All material appearing in this presentation, except that taken directly from copyrighted sources, is in the public domain and may be reproduced or copied without permission from SAMHSA or the authors. Citation of the source is appreciated. We ask that you not reproduce or distribute this presentation for a fee without specific written authorization from the Northeast and Caribbean Mental Health Technology Transfer Center. At the time of this presentation, Miriam Delphin-Brittman served as Assistant Secretary for the Mental Health and Substance Use at SAMHSA. The opinions expressed herein are the views of the speakers and do not reflect the official position of the Department of Health and Human Services or SAMHSA. No official support or endorsement of DHHS or SAMHSA for the opinions described in this presentation is intended or should be inferred. This work is supported by the grant that you see on the screen. Next slide, please. So during this presentation, our presenter may want to interact with you. You can either do that through the Q&A, which will occur at the end of the call, or you may also share your questions or comments that you have in the chat box. Just note that your question will be visible to all participants. If we do break out into breakout sessions or breakout rooms, these sessions will not be recorded. So we'll stop recording then, and then we'll resume recording once we go back to the main room for any didactic portion of this webinar. You will be able to also monitor the use of your camera as well as microphone, and you can also control who can see your chat comments. Next slide, please. The MHTTC network uses affirming, respectful, and recovery-oriented language in all activities. This includes language that is strength-based and hopeful, language that is inclusive, accepting of diverse cultures, genders, perspectives, and experiences, language that is healing-centered and trauma-responsive, language that invites individuals to participate in their own recovery journey, language that is person-first and free of labels, and language that is non-judgmental and avoids assumptions. Language that is also respectful, clear, and understandable and consistent with our actions, policies, and products. Now let's begin our webinar. We have Joni Dolce with us today. She is an assistant professor in the Department of Psychiatric Rehabilitation and Counseling Professions at Rutgers in the School of Health Professions. Joni has several years of experience working in behavioral healthcare settings, namely supported employment. She teaches courses in the department's undergraduate program, as well as provides training and technical assistance to behavioral healthcare providers. Her research interests include staff training and employment services. She presents nationally on the topic of employment services and is listed as a Society of Human Resource Management recommended speaker on the topic of creating workplaces that support mental health. So again, I want to welcome everyone, and I'll turn it over to Joan.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're doing some polls, so I don't know if anyone is familiar with Poll Everywhere. It can be a little bit finicky at times, but it does kind of help with some of the engagement and kind of fun to participate. So if you could queue up your smartphone or your computer, if you're using your computer, type in the search bar pollev.com/JoniDolce727 or text to the number 22333, and in the subject of that text, send it Joni Dolce 727, and then you should get a prompt that says that you are in our Poll Everywhere room. But again, if it's finicky, if it's not cooperating, no worries, we will use the chat, or we have such a nice kind of smallish group today. We can also just, raise our hands and chat. It's fun, but again, it could be finicky for some people's phones or computers, so no worries if it doesn't work. We will use other options. So I'll just leave it here for another 30 seconds or so, and before we get started, it looks like there are still some people entering the workshop, so we will get started. So we are looking at marketing, and if you are in supported employment services or doing other types of employment or vocational counseling or vocational work in your agency, marketing may not be something that you traditionally think of in terms of our role as counselors or our role as employment specialists or job coaches or voc specialists. However, marketing is really that piece of our job development that helps to kind of zero in on where we want to focus our job development efforts. It's the process of really drilling down some of those employers, businesses in the area that are a good fit for the folks that we're working with in our services. So marketing is traditionally more of a business type of concept. However, when we're looking at it with our employment services or staffing services, so we really want to make sure we're focusing our job development efforts in that area. So today we're really looking at defining marketing and defining some of the benefits of marketing. Also looking specifically at creating a marketing plan, like a very brief, understandable marketing plan. It's called Marketing Plan in 7 Steps. So it's kind of a nice format for us to be using in our employment services or our vocational services. And then we're also hopefully going to look at the beginnings of developing a marketing plan for your service. So if we have time at the end of today's session, we're going to look at a sample marketing plan and begin kind of chipping away at some of your own responses to those marketing plan steps and processes. So here is our first poll. What are some reasons to have a marketing plan? Looks like some people have already started. Again, if it's acting finicky for you, Kati is keeping an eye on the chat, and she'll let us know what people are saying. So no worries if the poll's not working, but is it to set goals? Is it to stay relevant with the business community? Is it to explore what makes your service distinct? Because that's what we also want to work on today. It's really looking at what makes your employment service unique or distinct among many other staffing services. We're going to look at exploring competitors, doing some kind of competitive analysis, and then having a marketing plan is also looking at assessing progress towards goals and being able to better target your job development efforts. So of course, all of these are accurate and kind of a trick, if you will, but yes, all of these are reasons to have a marketing plan. We want to be able to set goals. We want to be able to sit with our team and our supervisors and even administrators and be able to set our job development goals, and having that marketing plan helps us to do that. We want to make sure we're seen by the business community as professionals, as part of that business community. We want to stay relevant with the business community. So a marketing plan helps keep those ideas to stay relevant, kind of fresh on our plates. We want to, as I mentioned, what makes us unique? What makes our employment service distinct from all the other competitors that are out there? And we're going to look at, when we do our competitive analysis, something, focusing on the services we provide, other areas that might make us unique. So begin thinking about that. And we want to have a better target for our job development efforts. I provided job development for many, many years, provided training with individuals on the topic of job development out there in the community, working side by side with other job developers. And if there wasn't a target, we might just spend hours just sort of canvassing and knocking on doors and making cold calls. And it really was very ineffective and inefficient. So having a marketing plan helps to prioritize efforts and helps to look at all of the skills that your staff and you have, and help to kind of harness those skills and target those job development efforts based on your skills, based on job seekers' goals, and so on, and based on what the market is currently looking like. Okay, so let's move on. What about the time it takes? So think about the time that you spend doing all of the tasks. So maybe in the chat, you can kind of just tell me what other tasks on your plate you're currently doing as a vocational specialist, or as a job coach, or as a counselor in employment services. What are some of the tasks and responsibilities that you're currently already involved with? You can just use the chat as I'm talking, but it does take time. It takes some time and some thinking through who's responsible for what. What are some of the areas that we need to focus on with our marketing plan? However, it does translate into a more effective and efficient use of your time. I've always enjoyed those planning meetings with my team when I was working in supported employment. We would spend some time, maybe every quarter, every 6 months, at least every year, to really brainstorm about our marketing plan and what our marketing efforts. So I kind of saw that almost as like a team building exercise. It was a nice way to kind of pull away from the more mental health related tasks and really focus on those interactions with the business community, out there meeting with employers. So if you could even visualize this and pitch it to your supervisors or your team as a way to kind of work on your team building, that time could be kind of, a more pleasurable way of spending it, if you think about it that way. And when I show the sample marketing plan, you'll see that there are tasks that you can assign to your team or your team could volunteer to do, and it kind of cuts down that time a little bit. How many have a marketing plan that they're currently using? I know here in New Jersey, one of the features of many of the supported employment programs are to incorporate a marketing plan. I don't know how that's enforced or if it's enforced, but that is something that is encouraged from our state, to have marketing plans in place. I'm not suggesting that your state is doing that or that's something that you would need to do. However, it is something that our state is recognizing as important. So it looks like the majority of people don't have a marketing plan in place. So this is good timing. And it's also very good timing because of the pandemic. The workforce has changed. What are some of the changes that you're seeing in the workforce right now? What are some differences out there in the business community that you're recognizing and witnessing as you're out there job developing? You can just write in the chat or raise your hand and we'll unmute your mic. what are some of those differences 2 years compared to 2 years ago that you're seeing in the business community?
Please feel free. You can share in the chat, or you can also unmute your mic if you're comfortable.
Higher wages, Kyle mentioned, increased virtual working, absolutely. So people are working more remotely. There's an increase in that. The wages are higher. So your marketing plan can incorporate all of these changes to make sure that you're including some of these features that are now part of our workforce. You want to make sure that you're staying relevant. Teresa mentions more time for callbacks for employment. So those are some of the things that you're seeing. So having a marketing plan now, or beginning to consider a marketing plan, is really, this is really a critical time for that. So this idea of 7 steps to marketing planning kind of came out of some prior trainings that I attended with this person, Vicki Lynn Morgan from the Russmore Marketing Group. She's an entrepreneur and she specializes in what's kind of known as guerrilla marketing. And that's something that has been around for a number of years. And it's essentially kind of the opposite of that large advertising and marketing that you might see in our daily lives, billboards and banners on our web pages and so on. Guerrilla marketing really focuses on the person's personality and those personal connections that you make, and it's very kind of low key and using very free or inexpensive ways to market in the community. So these 7 steps are derived from that, and we're going to talk about each of the steps in pretty good detail. But as you can see, if you're beginning to develop a marketing plan, you could really develop a very comprehensive marketing plan and spend a significant amount of time developing it. This is a nice compromise because it really does get you thinking about each of these 7 areas, and it gets you spending the time to think through all of the aspects of your service that make you unique. What is your niche? What are the benefits to customers? And it doesn't have to be a very lengthy or time-consuming process. So when we talked about the time earlier, this is something that's fairly manageable. If you think through this with your team, and I'll show you, I have a blank that we'll send out with the materials, as well as a sample that's kind of already filled in that you'll see. Another team that I was working with, we worked on a marketing plan. It's actually from them. So we're going to talk about the purpose of your marketing. So what are those goals, kind of using a SMART goal format, like really thinking about specifically what outcomes do you want. We'll talk through those benefits to customers. So what are those benefits that customers will derive, and customers meaning employers in this case. We're really talking about marketing our services to the business and employment community. You may have other marketing efforts that this could really dovetail nicely with, in terms of marketing in the community for individuals to participate in services. This is really focused on the business community, that job development skill. What's your target market? And it's not just anyone. So there are, Kelly's target market might look very different than Justin's target market, just depending on, hopefully you guys aren't working together, but depending on geographically where you're located and the individuals that are participating in your services, what's your niche? So think about what makes you unique. This idea of marketing tools, I have a whole list that we'll go through, not in detail, but kind of chunk out 200 free or very, very inexpensive marketing tools. Focus on the identity of your business. So when we met a couple of weeks ago, if you were part of that training, we talked about our elevator speech, and as part of our elevator pitch, or our kind of introduction of ourselves, we looked at our identity as a service. And then what's your marketing budget? And that may seem sort of not very rational in human services that you would have a marketing budget for your employment services. But yes, sometimes there are budgets. And if we can kind of carve out what those things are that would probably make the most bang for your buck, we can do that today. So thinking about your marketing purpose, and again, you can kind of use that same SMART goal framework. Think about, and I'd like us to spend a little bit of time in the chat or unmuting your mic. I want to hear from you. What outcome do you want? So if you are thinking about your marketing, and if you raise your hand and we can unmute your mic, tell us what your position is, what your service looks like, you know, what specifically your service is, and what outcome do you want for your job development efforts. So maybe we'll spend a minute or so asking people to either write in the chat, unmute your mics, and spend a little bit of time thinking about what that outcome is. And that outcome might look similar to the mission of your organization. It might look a little bit different than that. It might have components of what your mission is for your service and or organization as a whole. But let's see. So Andrea is mentioning, I hear people don't know about my program, how I put it out everywhere and what my agency offers. Yes, so people may not know about the program. People who want to participate in services, individuals, job seekers, or employers may not know about the program. So it sounds like, Andrea, maybe having more of a presence might be an outcome, having a more kind of part of your business community or part of your community in general, and having people in the community know more about your services. Emily mentions more employers feeling confident hiring those in the disability community. Yes, so having employers want to look at you as a resource for individuals that they might be hiring. Let's see. Rebecca writes, ultimately, I'd like to make a connection that will allow our participants to get interviews. Yes, so make those connections with the business community, build those relationships so that individuals might, let me just read this one. Andrea, it's maddening. I also attend all Zoom calls that I can and introduce myself. Oh no, I go everywhere and anywhere, but I still find areas that have not heard of our services. Employers call, but it's the clients in feeling successful in but it's the clients, all the agencies know. Okay, so it sounds like it's reaching out to the employers, really having employers see you as a reliable resource in the community. Okay, I'm trying to keep up with these. Let's see. And to be a known resource. Latoya writes, more of my community reference my company than those who need services. I have so many jobs, but okay, here's something that may be new out because of the pandemic and some of the outcome of the pandemic. I have so many jobs that no clients who can and want to work, the clients don't know. So maybe even using some of these tools today to reach clients that you might want to reach who may not have a familiarity with your program. Certainly these can be transferred and translated to working with clients as well. I have a great network of employers and agencies. Let's see. I have a great network of employers and agencies. But it's clients that continue to say, I wish I knew about your services. So yes, we can continue. Also want to market to our work-ready participants and have them respond, which often is not through email. So yes, these are types of efforts that you could even kind of flip around and use if you're currently having more employers and jobs than people who want the jobs. This could certainly be used for that as well. So it sounds like a lot of you are thinking through what outcome do you want. Have that be kind of specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. So go through that SMART goal planning process when you're completing your own. plan. Step 2 of the marketing plan. So we have 7 steps. Step 2 is really thinking about what is the difference between you or your employment service and your competitors. So who are your competitors? Who would be competitors of yours? Andrea, did you want to say something?
I guess other HVRP programs, because we have 3 in the area, but we also have other employment agencies, but the other ones I can work with because we can work together and not be dipping from the same pot. So they work well with me. It's just other HVRP agencies that also, want to share our clients. We have 3 in the area, the same area.
So it sounds like working closely with other staffing services is something that your agency does pretty well or is able to do. It sounds like the other more competitors are those who are providing similar services to yours.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Crystal writes, we actually work well with our competitors. We piggyback services depending on needs and what we can offer versus them. So who are some of the competitors, Crystal, that you're referencing? Who are those in your community who are doing something similar? I know here in New Jersey, we have Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services. They do something similar. We have lots of supported employment services, ACT teams. It looks like Crystal writes, it's called Moves or Goodwill. So some similar types of competitors, but there are also staffing services. There are also recruiters. There are also temporary services that we also compete with. So if you think about who those other services are, and you think about what some of your strengths are compared to them. So just thinking about some of the competitors that you all just named, what would be one of your strengths? What's a strength of your service, Crystal? I'm going to go and click us into this competitive analysis so that we can check it out. Because I'd like to be able to show you. Oops. So here's, you can log on when you're in your office, but this is through SCORE, which is another good resource. It's counselors, retired counselors, to help with people in small businesses, which essentially your employment service can be viewed as a small business. Here's what you want to look at. Some of these factors on the left may not apply to your particular service, but think about the products. And that would really be kind of the services that you provide, your price, your quality, the selection, services, reliability, stability, expertise, what your reputation looks like, and so on. Kind of looking at your business, your employment service in those areas, and some may or may not relate 100% to what you're doing, but many of them do. What are the strengths? So if you think about the strengths of your price and the weaknesses of your price. So a strength might be, oftentimes it's free or very, very little cost or no cost to the employer. A weakness to that might be just the opposite. Employers might see that it's no cost or free or low cost as maybe something like, oh, what's, why is it free? What's up? What's going on with this? So you want to, as you're looking at your competitors or looking at others who are doing similar jobs, kind of begin comparing what that distinction is and thinking about ways to describe that price or the no cost. So that's just one example, but really thinking through your business compared to different competitors. So someone brought up goodwill. You would look at your business and the strengths and weaknesses and do something similar for goodwill or what you know of them. And certainly we want, you don't want to compete to the point where other services are not able to participate in the job development, but you want to just really closely look at what your strengths and weaknesses are. So why don't we go back to our slideshow. And Kati, you can see this?
Yes, it's perfect.
Okay. So spend some time on the SCORE website. Again, this could be kind of a team building activity or quarterly or every 6 months activity to spend that time looking through. What's your market? So who wants what you have? So when we think about targeting our market, we're really looking at maybe some labor market trends, maybe looking at some projections. You all mentioned earlier that virtual work, remote work, others, jobs that are plentiful perhaps because of the pandemic, but it's really also important to make sure that you're targeting jobs that people in your services want and are skilled and interested in pursuing. So you may have at one time people on your caseload with lots of jobs in one particular area, or lots of job goals pertaining to one area. So maybe you want to really focus efforts in that. For example, when I was providing services, we had a lot of people at that time who had just gone through nursing assistant or nurses aide types of trainings. So those positions were ones that we targeted. We went to a lot of assisted living centers. We went to a lot of clinics or hospital type settings, because that was sort of a large group of people that we were working with that had goals in those areas. You can also go onto your respective state DOL websites and look at the kind of current trends and current projections in your area. A lot of the I know in New Jersey, we have the one-stop center, and through the one-stop, you can see what types of businesses are coming into the area, even just looking in your newspapers and online news feeds to see kind of different industries or employers who are moving in that you might want to kind of get an early start introducing yourself and introducing your services. So who is interested in what you have? So thinking about, here are some suggestions, but who is interested in what you have? So some people have already identified businesses. Yes, Doreen, great suggestion. Never say free, always say no cost. In fact, some people even say, cost is paid by our clients, client fees, or somehow suggesting that, you're getting your costs from somewhere. And oftentimes people are purchasing your services through their insurance or through other grants that may be funding your services. So yes, I think that's a very important distinction to make. Businesses, employers, Chamber of Commerce, family-owned businesses, people who might offer apprenticeships and so on. So so I guess the bottom line is, if you're thinking about who's interested in what you have, you want to stay away from anyone. You really want to try to target who are those people who are interested. And if it is, the hot jobs or the family-owned jobs or the jobs that offer apprenticeships, then your marketing plan should be really focused and incorporate some of the efforts to reach out in those areas. So kind of following up on this, how are you different? Looking at your competitors again, finding out what your differences are. So think, and let's use the chat or unmute your mics. How are you different than others? So if you think about your employment services or vocational services, how are they different from others in your community? So if you were to do that competitive analysis and looking at others in the community, what makes you different or unique from those?
We offer credential training in 8 different in-demand job areas, and that really helps our clients.
Yes, so thinking about that, those distinctions. Gardenia, you had raised your hand.
Yeah, within my team, we work as part of a outpatient behavioral health treatment team. So the person is not only getting support with employment or education, they're also meeting with a counselor and a doctor, a nurse, people who can kind of help them with other goals that they might have to help them be successful in the job site.
Absolutely, and maybe you want to frame that when you're really thinking about your introduction and how you're interacting with employers in a way that is more of a universal. We have, we work with people who fortunately have supports and resources to address wellness needs in many areas of their life. So somehow you want to make sure that the way you're conveying that is something that employers can see that this is a universal area, not something that makes the people that you're working with so different that the employer might not want to give them a chance. But yes, I think that's a great suggestion. Looks like we have a couple more in the chat. A colleague uses the following, and this is Doreen, and I try to use a similar statement. I work for a state government and focus on connecting resources to employers specific to inclusive hiring initiatives. I thought this was great and wanted to share it. Absolutely, yes. So, inclusivity could include many aspects of someone's life. So you're not really disclosing personal disability-related information, but you're also letting the employer see how distinct your service is, maybe compared to just straight staffing services or other kind of recruiters. Andrea writes, we get results. Those who want jobs get jobs. We make sure they have a resume, training, on-the-job training, barriers to employment are met. We have case management. We follow along and supports mental health counseling, the medical model, dental housing, and a pharmacy. So, thinking through, it sounds like, Andrea, you're doing that, thinking through what makes you distinct. And also, as we're thinking about what makes us distinct, we again, to kind of reiterate, we don't want the employer to see us as so distinct that they might be uncomfortable or unsure or unwilling to work with us because they may see job seekers that we're referencing as so different and there is still stigma that's present, and we don't want to kind of encourage employers to think and base hiring decisions on myths that might be present. So describing your position, I think thinking through that, you are all kind of thinking that way. Your marketing tools. So looking at, this is a nice kind of way to chunk 6 kind of categories of marketing tools, and we'll go on this site and I can show you, but these are from Jay Conrad Levinson. He is sort of a developer of guerrilla marketing, if that's the right terminology, kind of was sort of the founder of this, and these marketing tools are so interesting to go through. When you think about the mini media, what does that mean? Well, that's really kind of your traditional marketing methods, maybe handwritten letters, maybe during the holidays, sending a note, maybe even going out there and canvassing and kind of, cold calling or finding out who you might get in touch with to make that cold call into a warm call. So those mini media are really about that. Maximedia again, more traditional and probably not likely that you would be using many of those. That's sort of the more larger scale, maybe a newsletter, which could also be e-media, but maybe, you know, ads, online ads, or other types of advertisements. But when we go through the list, there might be some things, and just because it's traditional and some of these are older methods, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not useful and not effective. So kind of looking through these e-media, you know, using that, email lists, ways to, you know, your tagline on your email. I don't know if people have seen, but some people have different badges. I'm a CRC, and we just got an email recently that you can get this little badge that says you're a certified rehab counselor, and that's under your signature. You can have like a little tagline, maybe part of your introduction. You know, we specialize in matching job seekers or matching qualified candidates to employers' needs. You know, something could be like a nice little tagline, or what's your email signature, and so on. Info media, kind of very similar to, you know, offering to present on a topic, or offering to, you know, host a webinar on something that you're skilled in doing, something that, again, makes you unique in the services that you provide. Human media, again, offering some consultation to the employer around something that they might be struggling with, that you have an expertise in. So thinking about what those areas might look like. And that may be what Andrea said, or someone had mentioned earlier, that inclusivity, being able to offer your expertise to an employer about how to help them hire more inclusive candidates, whatever that might be. And there's 200 of these that you'll look at on the list, but this idea of non-media, so word of mouth, having employers be able to, on your LinkedIn page, if you have something that's just devoted to your employment service, maybe on your LinkedIn, employers could give a recommendation, or you could ask for a recommendation, and maybe like the maxi media brochure that you create, maybe you create a small brochure and have some kind of testimonials from employers, but making sure they're very professional and businesslike, and they really address your uniqueness. You want to stay away from disability or anything else that would suggest a kind of charity on the part of the employer. You really want the employer to give a testimonial that really does put you in line with other professional businesses. So let's just quickly go through some of these. So I think they're an interesting. Kathy, did it come up, or do I have to hit new show? Okay, so
There it
again,
is.
kind of.
I see it. It's here.
Good.
It's okay.
So it goes through these 200. So this idea of mini media, so just having a marketing plan, personal letters. Again, some of these are older and traditional. Toll-free number, probably not as relevant now, or yellow page directory, but it does go through some more current ones. But again, some of the traditional ones may not always be a bad thing. This idea of canvassing and kind of going out there and just knocking on doors and using your elevator pitch. And again, that's not the most effective way to secure a job or interview, but it is a way to begin developing relationships with employers. So I'm just going to go through very, very, very briefly. You'll have a chance, but again, the maxi media, radio spots, magazine ads, a little bit traditional and probably not something that's necessarily feasible. E-media, I like the idea of having a website. If there's something that you could, you know, if there's a way to have a portion of your agency's website devoted to your service, if it doesn't land right on the agency's services immediately, if there's a way to kind of get the employer to just your site. So again, you're not disclosing disability related or mental health related information right from the very beginning. So again, blog posts, if you have an expertise in something and the employer has a blog or a newsletter, that could be a really good way to offer some of your expertise and consultation around something in their organization. So this is on the PowerPoint. Kati will be sending those out, so you don't have to write these down, but it just kind of gives some really good suggestions. And this human media, your circle, your networking, even your professional title, making sure when you're out marketing with employers, and this could even be something on your marketing plan to follow up with, are you called a counselor on your business cards or your email? You know, is it very mental health or disability focused? Maybe there's a way that you can talk with your administration or your supervisor about altering that to make it more business friendly language. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint now, but again, these are just some 200 tools that many are no cost or very, very minimal cost. So what is your most important marketing tool? You can participate in the chat, or we can just kind of look and see what's already here. Really the staff, really you're your most important marketing tool. And that's what this idea of like real marketing is all about, like using your own personality, your own, not like big budgets, but really kind of drilling it down to your characteristics and yourself and your ability to be professional and answer the phone or emails kind of quickly after you receive them from an employer, or being responsive and you know, having that, people are mentioning that personal touch, that word of mouth, that networking. Yes, that those are all very important. A website's important. The product is certainly important, but this idea of you, and you think about all the ones that are kind of bold and in the center here. So lots of people have answered these. They're really the free ones, right? The word of mouth, networking, personal contact, and staff. They're ones that really don't cost anything. So it doesn't have to be a large business budget. Your identity. So this is something, and I think we touched on it last 2 weeks ago when we talked about our elevator speech. If you weren't able to meet with us, Crystal, you have your hand up?
I did that by accident, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. That's so funny. I could never even find the hand. So the fact that you did it by accident, bravo. What image do you want to convey to employers? So I had mentioned a couple of minutes ago that you don't want to convey an image of charity. You don't want the employer to see you as this charitable resource that provides people with disabilities to kind of work in very low paying jobs or work in jobs that are the very fewest hours. You want the employer to see you as a business that they can rely on to recruit skilled, reliable employees that are a good job match. So that's the image you want to portray to employers. When we met a couple of weeks ago, you can get the recording from Kati if you want. We talked about business language versus human service language and making sure that we're not using the terms client or consumer. We're really focusing on applicant or job candidate. We're matching our language to that of the business community. So making sure when you're doing your business plan, thinking through that business identity. And that could be looking at your social media sites. That could be looking at your business cards if you're using those, looking at that signature on your email, having a dedicated email potentially for employers to use, so that they're not getting an agency email that's, very disability focused or mental health focused. So you want to make sure that image is something that is professional and business-like. So as part of that, I added this because the image you also want to make sure you're conveying to employers is Yeah, Andrea, you have a work mail for jobs, 86. Okay, perfect. It sounds like you're already kind of thinking about that, making sure that your email is reflective of business and community, not necessarily mental health or disability. So we want to also have an identity of someone who is sort of part of that business community, right? So I put this up here just as like a tickler for us to remember how to establish these linkages. When we meet next week for our final training, we're going to talk about how to develop and maintain relationships with employers, but establishing linkages, reaching out to them on social media. You can answer this question, drop by periodically to say hello with no other agenda. I did that a lot in a previous job, and I would often do it with one of my coworkers, and we've spent a couple of hours in the morning or afternoon just dropping by, talking to the employer, of course, being very mindful of their time and not taking up their time, but sending emails or cards during holidays, assisting with something that you have an expertise in, having some sort of presence at business functions, and following employers and human resource professionals on social media. So if you have your own personal LinkedIn account, that's great. You might want to maintain that for your personal purposes, but if you have an account that you could create through your service, that may be something that people in your agency might be able to help you with, or your supervisor might be able to provide some guidance on. But following employers and hiring managers and human resource professionals to begin establishing those linkages. And then a budget. Yeah, right. So probably not like big bucks going around, but I know that when I was providing services in a small mental health center, behavioral health organization, we had a teeny tiny budget, maybe just a couple of $100s a year. And what we chose to spend that budget on was a membership to our local Chamber of Commerce. And that for us was a way to establish linkages, was a way for us to network, to kind of get a sense of what the business needs were in the community, kind of ticked off a lot of these different steps, right? So it kind of helped us follow employers to see what changes or what the labor market was like. So for us, if we even had a teeny tiny bit budget, we would spend it on a membership to Chamber of Commerce. Andrea writes local small business meetings too. They have about 200 a year. Yes. So if you're able to become a member of a small business association, these are good ways, I find, of spending your budget. And again, you can brochures, if you have a little bit more in the budget, are okay. They're not usually the most effective. Business cards, being able to hand those out and maybe even have like a little tagline on your business card that tells the employer almost immediately what you do. Just a one little sentence on the back or something to just reinforce your uniqueness and what your services provide. So some free marketing tools. We talked about many of these job fairs. Even just going to job fairs, not necessarily, this is what someone mentioned, a job fair to just become familiar with the business community. Maybe you're taking clients, that's not always the most effective way, but it allows you and the job seeker a chance to get a feel for the employers and what they're looking for in your community. Employer testimonials, these are just some ideas on some free tools that you can use or plan to use. So if you want to put in your own response, so what are some free marketing tools that you plan to use or have used in the past, similar to ones mentioned, or you might have some that are really unique and different that we haven't thought of. And again, if Poll Everywhere is acting finicky, which it sometimes does, just write in the chat. Oh, and we did send out holiday cards or kind of end of the year notes to employers when I was working in supported employment. And it was just kind of a nice reminder that we're in the area and we're thinking of them. So Facebook, yep. So if you have a Facebook page, that might be something. LinkedIn, if you're just on the regular plan, not the deluxe one, is another good resource. So I wanted to show you a sample marketing plan, and also a blank one, and also one that is completed, so that we could, let me just make sure you're seeing it. So here's, again, it's very, very rudimentary. It's not complex or at all a complicated, but it's answering these 7 questions, and we'll send this off today's date, but also a review date. So also kind of think about when you want to review the strategies and review the plan, at least every 6 months. I mean, if you could do every quarter, or if things drastically change in the labor market, you might want to do it earlier than that. But thinking, again, kind of looking at this agency's plan, the purpose of their marketing is to make connections with hiring managers, build those relationships, and have these partnerships with local employers. So they're kind of looking at the goal that they have is to connect qualified job candidates with employers, and to make job matches between employers and candidates. Yes, you'll receive copies. Gardenia, thank you for the question. You'll receive copies of the sample plan and a blank plan after today's meeting. So I'm just going to go through this very, very quickly and encourage you to think through, for your own service, having a day or half a day or a couple of hours that you and your team could spend kind of thinking through these. If this was a longer training, we could have probably done it in here, but I'm going to kind of leave it here. But I do want to just make sure that when we get to this outline of the marketing tools, I wanted to make sure that you identified the person responsible. So for business cards for this agency, it was Clyde, and I just adjusted the dates to make them more relevant to now, but he was going to look into creating cards, or he kind of had a knack for graphic design. So that was something that was right in his wheelhouse, and people identified who was going to work on it and the dates that they would be doing it. So these are just some examples of the tools that they plan to use. So that's that for the, and then again, very user-friendly sample marketing plan, blank one that you could just fill in with your colleagues, but thinking through what this looks like and reevaluating it periodically. But yes, we will send this out to everyone after. Sorry about that. So in summary, we reviewed some of the benefits of having a marketing plan, which included approaching your job, targeting your job development efforts. It also is a way to stay relevant with the business community. We identified 7 very kind of user-friendly steps to begin marketing planning. You could certainly use more complex and comprehensive marketing plans. And then we also looked at a sample, and we will provide you with those samples, but checked out some of those tools. So some references, if you wanted to get the original guerrilla marketing book, there it is. And then next session is in December. And then I know we have an evaluation to fill out.
Yes, thank you, Joni. Thank you so much. So everyone, thank you so much also for participating so actively during our webinar today. So in this session, we didn't get to use a breakout session, but I think in the third we might, right, Joni?
I think so, yes.
Okay. And just as Joni mentioned, I will email everyone a copy of the slides as well as the plan that she shared. That will be emailed to all of our participants today. And the email that you registered with will be the email that you will receive a certificate of completion for today as well. Just as a reminder, this webinar was being recorded and will be posted on our website in case you have a colleague that would like to reference or review this recording, that it will be made available. On your screen, what you see is our evaluation. It's a QR code for our evaluation. I will also share this evaluation link in the chat for you if you do not have a QR code reader. Right now.
Thank you, and please email me if you have questions. My email is here on
Yes.
the slide. Kathy just put the evaluation link in the chat.
Joni, we can move it to your contact information so that way everyone has. There you go. So this is Joni's contact information in case you'd like to contact her directly. Again, I want to thank you, everyone. Thank you, Joni. And if you have any questions, you can either email Joni or myself. A lot of you have received your Zoom meeting links from me. So if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please feel free to share them. And with that said, this concludes our webinar, and I hope you will join us for our third next week.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.